Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Mio, CEO Experience Agency, The Blanche. Each week, I bring on a different person from business who's doing some game-changing things. And even when we're in this really unique time of coronavirus and lots of unrest, it's really important to talk to folks from all different walks of life and seeing how they're managing and pivoting and building. And so that's why I'm super excited to have Yolanda Johnson on the show. And she's the president of YFJ Consulting and the founder of WOC, which is Women of Color in Fundraising and Philanthropy. We're gonna have a great conversation. Take a listen. Hey, Yolanda.
Hello, thanks for having me today. It's great to be here.
Sure thing. Great to have you on. So even though the world might be on fire outside, the podcast still does not change. First question always remains the same. So Yolanda, what was your first job?
My first job was working at an insurance company back where I'm from in Omaha, Nebraska.
Wow. So how old were you when you were working at an insurance company?
Well, I mean, it was literally my first job. So it was like a summer job when I was coming home from college, but it was still a great way to get my feet wet into the whole workforce arena.
Awesome.
So
And what did you learn? What did you learn that you didn't want to do that ever again?
I learned a lot about workplace dynamics and politics. Actually, I was very young, but that meant that I was kind of a fly on the wall because people thought they could say anything around me and I would hear it. But I learned a lot from what I knew a lot of what was really going on.
Wow. Very cool. And so how do you go from selling insurance in Nebraska to working in philanthropy? What was that journey like?
Oh, well, so the insurance job was a summer job just to learn things and be immersed in the workforce during the summers. But my first actual job coming out of graduate school was to work for an arts and humanities council in the development department in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where I had gone to undergrad. And so that journey began then. You know, I have a master's in arts administration with a focus on fundraising and events. And it was a lovely road, a lovely path, because I've crafted a life of two different areas. So I have the music and then I have the fundraising and philanthropy, and I've always had that sort of crafted life. So that's how I ultimately ended up in what I'm doing now with fundraising and philanthropy.
Awesome. And I think a lot of folks have like a little bit confusion, like, well, what does fundraising and philanthropy really mean? Like, how do you actually impart that skill set? Like, what is that? What's sort of like, I guess the best way to say this, kind of, what is your job?
Well, fundraising, they're both doing the good work in our society, essentially. And so from the fundraising perspective, it's varied. You know, when you're at a big machine, you have the opportunity often to specialize in a particular area. So you may be the manager or the director of special events or of individual giving, of major gifts. In smaller shops, then you're the director of development and you're wearing lots of different hats and you become more of a generalist a lot of the time. But we're using all of those different avenues to raise the money to do the good work. We're illuminating that path for the philanthropists to be able to make the decision on where they're going to be spending their dollars and putting their beliefs behind the dollars. So on the philanthropic end, it's working with high net worth individuals, institutions, and you don't have to be high net worth to be philanthropic. That's one of the points I've really been trying to drive home now. We all are philanthropic in many different ways whenever you contribute any of your hard-earned or otherwise dollars to nonprofits or to organizations that are trying to help.
Awesome. And, I think right around this time, I think lots of folks are trying to figure out, like, okay, well, how do I donate? How do I help? What are some good tips when thinking and trying to figure out the right nonprofits to donate to, especially in this current climate? Like, are there some good, helpful steps that you can give?
Sure. And this is coming from people in the philanthropic sector and from philanthropic advisors that I've spoken with recently, we've really tried to delve into how to help people make those decisions and really doing the research, understanding exactly to what you're giving, knowing the mission of the organization, knowing the financial health of the organization and the track record of the organization in fulfilling its mission. So it's really, you know, whenever you give a proposal to a donor, it's really like an investment prospectus, right? They're investing in the organization. So you want to make sure that they have fulfilled their mission. You want to look at the 990, do the due diligence on the finances, and just make sure that everything is going well at that organization so that they'll survive and continue to do the good work that they're doing. And really, you know, it's hand, heart, mind. Find things that really resonate with you. What change do you really want to see, and then put your dollars behind that, and then you can rank those organizations according to some of the things that I just mentioned, the research that you do, to know how well they'll do that work.
I mean, I think that's key. It's like research. I mean, I think every day a story on Twitter about an organization that everyone kind of got behind, whether it's a GoFundMe or this bail fund, and then you quickly find out that like the money didn't go to the people that you thought it was going to go to, and then that breaks that bond of what you think you should be doing, and the level of trust just goes out the window.
Exactly. And so, you know, that's why it's so important for nonprofits to be transparent, and also for donors to make sure they're understanding. And, you know, that relationship of communication, especially during a time like COVID, and then COVID on top, you know, the civil unrest that's happened on top of COVID. People have to really stay in tune and stay in touch with each other about what they're doing, because with COVID, a lot of organizations have also had to pivot. You know, that's the key word right now. The great pivot of 2020 is what I call it. But a lot of people have had to really change their focus and get the basic work done on just human beings, and then they can go beyond that.
Awesome. And I think that's the key right now. So, you know, it's interesting. So there was a really interesting meme I saw online, and it was like, what do you call a group of Karens? And and their answer was a well-funded nonprofit. And I was like, not wrong at all.
Oh, that's a good one. You have to send that to me.
And so I love, you know, I think there is this weird misconception about Black women in nonprofits and what our roles can be. And the fact that, you know, you've created WOC, I'd love for you to kind of talk about, like, you know, your experience as a Black woman in philanthropy and why you felt the need to sort of create WOC and where you hope to go with it.
That's a great question. Well, it all starts from the fact that I am also the first African-American president of an organization called Women in Development New York, the New York City chapter of Women in Development. It's a premier fundraising organization for women in fundraising and philanthropy in the metro area. And WID is having its 40th anniversary, and yet I am the first Black president of the organization. So that was a big diversity milestone. It was daunting and wonderful, because I began to ask the question with some of my colleagues, is the field just absolutely not diverse? Is it a pipeline issue? And it is a pipeline issue. But, or are they there and they just don't feel like they have a space and a place to come? And it turned out to be the latter, because suddenly I started getting outreach from women of color in the field, telling me, now that I see someone who looks like me, I'm going to start coming around. I mean, I was in tears with some of the messages that I received. And so I launched a diversity and inclusion task force through WID, and that's wrapping up right now, actually, and the final report is coming out. I think it's going to drop tomorrow, actually. And so we're excited about that. And so I'm continuing that work on, but I also began to realize that I have no control over the future. And so I have to make sure that I also continue to do this work with women of color in fundraising and philanthropy independently. It's a cousin to WID, I say, you know, but they're independent organizations. And WOC is that space. It's the space for women of color to come together, to be celebrated, to support each other, to be championed, to progress in their careers, but to have this network of each other. You know, it's a place to find each other, because sometimes that can be really difficult in the, you know, in fundraising and philanthropy. So just to really connect, it has lots of different pillars, from financial literacy, you know, on both sides, wealth building, professional development, lots of programming coming up. It has an online resource library that's really, I'm really excited about that, where we can put together all of the publications and research that's been done on women of color in the profession, so that we have it all in one place, sort of a treasure trove. So we needed this space. And, you know, sometimes you plant a seed, you try something out, and the reaction is often the validation. And so that's certainly been the case with WOC. I'm so excited because other people are so excited. We have over 100 members in less than 2 weeks across the nation. So I'm just, and the world, actually. We've got somebody in the Netherlands as well. So just really looking forward to this.
Awesome. And what do you hope to achieve with the organization?
We hope to create that space for the women of color so that they can be even more successful, to have the honest conversations, to provide some of the tools that will help them to progress in the field, to get to that C-suite, to diversify the field, to get along better together as women of color even, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done there too.
Yolanda, whatever do you mean, crabs in a barrel?
Right.
You know, I feel like sometimes I've seen, I'm having, served on some boards and, volunteered. I oftentimes see stuff where I'm like, really? Why? Does it have like this? It does not have to be this complicated, but then there it is. So I'm always like, I just want to help and do good things. I don't need the politics and the drama.
Amen
that comes with it. It's really not necessary. I don't want your job. Not interested. I have enough to do. And I think oftentimes that sort of like dissuades, women of color from getting involved, because they don't want like petty drama, because they do that with their daily jobs. And
right.
So much, they have enough Karens and Amy Coopers to deal with on their day job, much less in a nonprofit setting where, it's not for your profit, which is what I always say about nonprofits. And it's hard, it's sometimes hard to kind of figure out how to navigate those spaces. Question for you about, serving on like nonprofit boards, if, you're a Black woman, like, is there like a set path or, steps you can take so that you can end up either on like a leadership council, advisory board? Like, I think one of the things that's coming out of a lot of this stuff right now is that, a lot of Black women are like, I'm going to step forward and make myself more visible, give myself more, if I've got the money, I want to give back. I want to angel invest. I want to, really put my money to work for our communities. Like, what are some steps you think in terms of like kind of getting involved on like the board, advisory board level that Black women can take?
Well, I think that two things: being strategic about whatever it is that you do. Now, strategic doesn't mean inauthentic, just being strategic and knowing exactly what it is that you want to do and figuring out how to get that done. And also, just preparing yourself for that leadership role and not being afraid, just believing in yourself and knowing that that there's a place for you at the table. And that's something that I say very often. Even though you may not see that seat at that table, you can create that space and that seat, because life is also about relationships. So strategy, confidence, relationships, developing the relationships, connect the dots, see who it is that you already know. And that's called prospecting and fundraising. That's how, sometimes you determine what donors to ask for things, because you do the research, you find out what they're interested in, and how to make that ask and how to develop and cultivate that relationship. So looking at your relationships, thinking strategically, and then just going for it and being prepared and making it happen, because most boardships come from invitations. You're usually invited to be on a board. Sometimes you can reach out to an organization and say, I'm interested in being on your board. But for the most part, it's by invitation and relationships. And also there are some great programs out there, leadership programs and board placement programs that will work with nonprofits to place people onto boards. But that's the importance even of networks like WOC, because if we know each other, then I serve on several nonprofit boards. I'm about to go on to a couple even this week, and now that I'm there, I can start making those seats at the table for other women of color in those spaces. And so I think we all have to think strategically, from the sense of, if you want to join a board, if you're already on one, think differently. Don't just go with status quo, but think about what your board looks like and how you can make other seats at the table for other women of color and other Black women. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. It's like, when you lift, as you climb, you must lift. And the party's no fun if you're by yourself. So make room so you can bring a friend.
Exactly.
So looking back on what your awesome career has brought you, what would you tell 25-year-old Yolanda?
At 25, I had this colossal quarter-life crisis, actually. So I tell myself to calm down. There's so much life ahead of you, and to again, to be strategic about what you want to do, experience as many things as you can as possible, but just be authentic and honest about who you are and exactly what you want to do, so that hopefully you won't have too many detours on your journey to success and to your future.
Yeah, calm down. I think that's a big one. I think sometimes, especially younger folks, assume that everything has to be done by the time you're 25 or you're a failure. I'm like, oh, no.
Oh my gosh, I thought I was old. I was like, what am I going to do? I already have this, I've done the education that I'm going to do, and now I have to figure out the rest of my life. And I can't believe that I felt that way. Bless my heart back then, because I only knew.
It's like, that's the thing. I think, especially now where there's so much pressure, you see all these Instagram and TikTok stars and making all this money. And I think it puts all this added pressure on younger generations of the things that you're supposed to do. Like, everything should have been, you're supposed to solve world hunger, became a billionaire, and married that dude who also is a billionaire by your 29th birthday.
Yeah.
And it's like, that, this isn't the real world that we live in. And letting that go, I think, is key for a lot of folks, where it's like, look, would I have loved to have done things differently when I was 25? Totally. But I think, I always say that, you never lose, you learn. So in all those lessons where you thought something bad was happening, it's like, well, I learned, okay, never doing that again. Or 2, okay, next time this happens, I'll take this path instead of that path. And I don't think I don't think I would be having this conversation here with you right now had I not taken all those twists and turns in my career and fallen, made those mistakes. So it really is like, yeah, I remember I had this whole plan. I had my entire life planned out when I was 29. I'm like, yeah, that was not did not happen. And you know what? I'm happier now I'm happy now than when I was when I was 29. That was 10 years ago. So there you go.
Good. Yeah. And that's life, right? It is a journey. It's a matter of, I think, that being just honest about who we are and going for it. We only get one life to live. So, you have so many things going through your head when you're at the 25 era, moment of your life. And you still have things going through your head when you're not 25, don't get me wrong. But I'm happy for every experience. I have no regrets. I just see very clearly now that it's okay to embrace every aspect of yourself and to move forward with that, because I had such an identity crisis sometimes between the music part of my life and the other things that I were doing and I was doing, and now it's all come together in a really beautiful kind of way. So I'm just very grateful.
Yeah, the journey is always the best part about it all, because it really is sort of like the Dr. Seuss book where it's like, oh, the places that you'll go.
Yeah.
And just go for it. So I'm sure that this whole universe of nonprofit philanthropy is probably rather stressful because we're in the middle of multiple pandemics. What are you doing for your self-care?
Self-care, well, in the middle of launch period for WOC, that really entails, I'm a person of faith, so that's a big part of my life. And again, just trying to calm down and embrace. I have to limit some of my news intake to be, because there's so much bad news out there. So just making sure that I have reliable sources and that I, know what I'm looking at and how to sort of distill that and process it right down into meaningful ways of things that I can do and take action. So yeah, just getting plenty of rest and finding things that I like to do, finding ways to do that even if I can't be out and about quite as often. And then, my faith is a big part of that, prayer and meditation and things like that.
Awesome. And so necessary, because it is a very, very stressful time. And we have to take care of ourselves, because the only way we're going to survive is madness.
Yeah.
And we take good care of ourselves and put ourselves first. I was telling a friend of mine, I was like, write down the words "me first," because you've got to put your oxygen mask on first before you can save anybody else.
Yeah, that's definitely true. But your environment is so important. Now, I am self-employed, so I had the benefit of being used to my environment and my space. A lot of people, that was a shell shock for them, because they were like, oh my gosh, suddenly I'm at home all the time. What am I going to do with myself? So I've always done this, even when I was working in-house. People came to my office just to hang out, because I had like aromatherapy diffusers, humidifiers, the heaters, I have flowers.
I just bought one,
plants.
actually.
See, yeah, it's that, like right now I am smelling peppermint. And
oh my God, really? I have the same thing going right now.
Really? See?
I literally bought a diffuser yesterday because I got all of these essential oils that finally came in over the weekend. And I was like, oh wait, it didn't come with a diffuser? What the hell? So I ordered one on Amazon and it got here in like a minute. And so then I like set it up last night, and then last night I did like this sort of like calming lavender, and then this morning I put in the peppermint to like spark up my room. And I'm like, so yeah, smelling the same thing.
We're totally on the same wavelength, because I already prepared my peppermint one for the one on my nightstand for nighttime. So I'm with you, and I have peppermint for the daytime. It's all good.
It's all good. Because girl, you need it. It's like just like take it down a notch, because this is wild.
Yeah.
So like got to. So as part of my series of interviews that are happening during this very unusual time, I'm asking if my guests have a give and or an ask to the audience. So doesn't have to be something like physical that you're giving or asking for, but just whatever kind of pops into your mind.
Oh, I've got something, because it's been on my mind.
Go for
I told
it.
you I'm really restless right now. I think that what happens over the next few weeks is really going to impact what happens for years to come. And we really could be on the cusp of real change if we take the right steps right now. So I'm going to ask everybody, through some networks and things that I'm working on with WOC, I want everybody to take a pledge, a racial equity pledge. And I want you to promise me that you will take real action. It's education, legislation, action. So educate yourself about what's really going on out in the world right now. Promise me that you'll vote in all of the elections that are wherever you are, your local elections, the presidential election, and promise me that you will do something meaningful for yourself, whatever that is. It could be as large or small as it needs to be, as long as it's real, and that you keep doing that for the next year. Take this pledge. It's a pledge that's going to be coming out in a more official way. I'm just talking about it right now because I really want people, if you're in leadership at an organization, get in touch with a DEI expert, do an undoing racism seminar, train your people, listen to your people, champion the people of color, the Black people, support them, not just because it's popular right now and I'm seeing all these lovely lists of Black-owned businesses and everything else. Just please let that be the case in another year. So Let's not just do it for this moment, but let's really work together for change. So pledge to take real action, educate, legislate, action.
Awesome. And I could not agree more. I want to see what you people are doing 3 months from now, 6 months from now, and 12 months from now. Like, I don't want to hear about the fact, oh, we moved on. Like, this is the moment that we all have to like push as hard as we can to make real, lasting, and meaningful change where we think about things.
Amen.
And say, okay, we can help with mortgages, we can help with small business loans, we can help with software, we can help with affordable housing. Like, there are structural things that people can do at organizations as long as it requires a little bit of imagination and thought process, and not just writing a check and thinking you check the box.
Yes, I co-sign on that entirely. We appreciate the checks. In the nonprofit industry.
Of course.
But again, there's power behind that check when you really had the mind and the thought and you did the research on where it's going, and when you hold that organization accountable, beautiful things can happen. So yeah, definitely. There's so many different ways to engage.
Perfect. Absolutely. Well, Yolanda, it's been such a delight to have you on the show. So to keep on chatting for quite a while. We'll put all the information about WOC and getting in contact with you in the show notes. And and I hope that folks take this pledge, because I think it's so very necessary at this time. So thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. And if people want any help with their pledges, they can get in touch with me. Info at YFJ-consulting.com. We're taking all of the feedback there. So any support that you need in doing this, we're here for you for that.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And that is our show.